Everyone. I appreciate you joining today. Today is the first event in our three-part series. This is E-Rate Plus. We're covering the history, eligibility, and deadlines as it relates to E-Rate. And our speaker for this series is going to be Miss Janie Griffith. Janie has worked for, I believe it's Walton School District in the past, but she's also served as a consultant to a variety of school districts across the state of Florida, as well as library systems. She's going to be discussing with us the history and purpose of E-Rate and its inception in the mid 90s, as well as some of the updates or changes to eligibility, the forms and processes to follow for an application, relevant deadlines, as well as requirements that need to be adhered to, such as the gift rules that restrict or control how districts, how schools or libraries can accept or not accept gifts from manufacturers or different partners. So, Miss Janie, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the group, and then we'll dive right in.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for having me. I have recently retired from Walton County School District. I was involved with E-rate since 1996 at its inception, and I have been consulting with several districts in the state of Florida, and I'm available to help anyone that has any questions.
And as Miss Janie said, we do also have her contact information throughout the documents here in the slide deck, as well as at the end of the document here. But if anybody does want to reach out to Miss Janie or needs to reach out to us, we will make her email available, as well as our solutions team. You can reach out to them if you need to, and you can also be directed to Miss Janie through there. So Miss Janie, if you don't mind, can you take us through the history of E-Rate? I know you mentioned it started in 96, and that was when you were first introduced to it. But what is the history of E-Rate, or what is E-Rate from its start?
E-rate began, of course, like I said, in 1996 for school districts and schools, charter schools, and libraries. When they first began, or as of now, also they have two categories. Category one, which is telecommunications, that includes your WAN and your internet. Originally, whenever it started, they also included your pot lines, which are plain old telephone lines, and cell service, but they have done away with that now, and you can't use those two. We also in category two, that's all your internal connections, your managed internet broadband services, and your basic maintenance of internet connections. And when we started with the paper forms and fax method, and you didn't have a base that you could spend. It was first come, first serve. When all their money was spent, the last people did not get funded. So now they've changed that. In 2015, we went electronic to a portal. All district schools, any entity has access to the USAC portal, and whoever is administrator over that district or library, they give permissions to the different participants as to what they can do. And in 2021, they began a 5-year budget, and so they set a specific amount, $4.76 billion for a 5-year plan. Each school district was given $167 per student to use. And once they use that up over the 5 years, there will be no more money given out to the school districts until 26. Now, the USAC does not go by the same school calendar or fiscal year, as the districts do. They have their own. Like the year that we're starting in, that started July 1, was 23. So we still have years 24 and 25 before they give out any additional monies. And the bin, as I spoke, each district has a bin. The bin stands for Billed Entity Number. There's a couple of ways to have it invoiced. The SPI, which stands for Service Provider Invoicing. That's where whomever you choose as your service provider to bill USAC, and you only pay your portion. Now, if you use the BEAR form, which is Form 472, and that stands for Billed Entity Application Reimbursement, You as the applicant pay for everything up front, then you get a reimbursement from USAC for the whole amount that they funded. Well, when you use your this is a way if you use your capital outlay money to make purchases for your hardware, you can get all that money reimbursed to you and it goes into your general operating. So that is just an easier way to convert capital outlay money into general operating money.
Okay. And I know, Dana, you kind of jumped to some of the forms that you wanted to talk about. Did you want to go into that now, or did you want to go back to some of the, I guess, some of the earlier elements of E-rate, like the differences between Cat 1 and Cat 2? What do you think would be good to tackle right now?
I think I touched and it's really in the slideshow, the differences in the Cat 1 and Cat 2 on the slide really has it. There you go. That really defines the different services.
So I know here you have the least lit fiber, the dark fiber, the internet access, all of those components of Cat 1. What does that look like for a district, and how does, I guess, how does a district go about getting E-rate funding for, Cat 1? Is it a different process? Is it the same application? You just apply it to different technology? What does that look like?
The Cat 1 basically is the internet and your WAN for your
Mm.
district. And whenever I as a consultant, I separate my Cat 1 applications from my Cat 2 because I don't want my WAN and my uh, internet held up because they have questions on my Cat 2, which is which I consider hardware and services. And that way, when you separate them, then they don't have to all be combined and funded all at one time. So I like to keep them separated. The Cat 1, I just do that as my telecommunications, and the Cat 2, I do is the hardware and the services.
Okay, gotcha. Um, and
And like I
the
said, I'm sorry, on the Cat 2, that's where the districts can use their capital outlay money
mhm,
to turn it from capital outlay into general operating money if they file it as a fair form. They would
okay.
have to pay everything up front and get their reimbursement, which would go straight to the bank, and then they would use that they could use that as general operating.
Um, I want to come back to that in a bit as we go back to the form section. But you mentioned you will keep Cat 1 and Cat 2 separate, in case there are questions. Is Cat 1 or Cat 2 more likely to go through some type of scrutiny from USAC or the FCC? Is that, I guess, is there, more documentation required for Cat 2 to show that it's, your request is eligible or something like that?
No, sir, but the Cat 1 is you've got your district has to have their internet and their telecommunications part. They have to know that is going to be funded before their Cat 1, Cat 2, because they've got, no matter what, they've got to be prepared if it's not funded to pay for it out of pocket. That's
Okay.
why I separate mine, and because you go through a PIA review, and normally when you have to sign a contract for your Cat 1, and normally the first year when you put out for your internet and your WAN, then that's usually whenever you get a lot of scrutiny.
Okay.
So then after your first year of that 3-year contract or however many year contract your district allows. Some districts only allow you to put out a 3-year contract. Some allow you to put out a 5. And then when you put out your RFP for your Cat 1, you can always have an option of an additional year lease or 2 years on the contract if your district allows it. And now on the Cat 2, you can also have your contract for more than 2 years for that also. But whenever you go to your Cat 2, that's your hardware. You're going to have a PI review, and they're going to ask you um, when you file your 471 with your Cat 2, you have to say what model, what manufacturer, all that of what, let's just say, access point that you're getting. And then you have to make sure that you have your license included and everything. So then the PIA reviewer, more than likely, is going to come back and say, I need documentation from your vendor that this is the true and correct amounts. So then you have to go back and forth between your vendor and your PIA reviewer. So this can hold up your contract, your category one contract, if you've already gone through that major review for the first year. So that's why I just break mine out.
Keep them separate.
Yes,
Th-
and in your category one, you might just you might decide to do it SPY because that's got to come out of general operating anyway. The
okay,
cat two, which is hardware, can come out of your capital outlay. Now the services can't come out of they have to come out of category. They have to come out of your general operating because capital outlay does not allow you to purchase some things from there.
okay. You mentioned PIA. Either it's like a person or a group. What is a PIA review, or who is the PIA?
Whenever you file your Form 471, then they have a group of reviewers, and you get assigned a reviewer for each application that you put in. And that person contacts you and asks you any questions and through your portal, not through email, through your portal. And so then you can contact them on the phone, but you stay with that one person through the entire application.
Okay, so kind of like your support on the USAC side to make sure that your application is done right.
That's correct. To make
Okay,
sure that you are following all the USAC rules.
okay. I guess from here, we you kind of touched on the purpose of E-rate, but is that purpose or the use of these federal dollars to help with the expansion of telecommunications and broadband in the 90s? I know, the technology and what's eligible hasn't really changed much over the course of the last 30 years or so. And we'll be talking about some of those changes, but have things kind of been consistent? And when I'm asking if it's been consistent, has it been easy for somebody like you as a consultant to kind of keep track of rules and what needs to be done, and if changes do occur, the changes that are required in regard to reporting and the application process?
You have to each year they send out a rule and order.
Okay.
And so you have to go through and read and see what changes they have made.
Hmm.
And they send out an eligible list of hardware that is eligible.
Hmm.
As you said, that has not changed very much over the last years, but they can change it. SEC can change it at any time because they have the last say so.
Gotcha.
And the discounts go from 20%. For category one, you can get up to a 90% discount
Hmm.
and no less than 20%. On category two, you get no more than 85% and no less than 20%. And all that is based on your free and reduced lunch count. In the state of Florida, in the end of October, they have the food service person from each district has to send in a report. And so then at that time, the applicants update their portal with telling USAC how many students they have per site and how many of them are free and reduced lunch. That determines your discount amount that you get.
Okay. Um, so with the history of E-rate, we've seen that it started in the 90s. They made the transition kind of late in the game to an online portal, an online resource that was available for everybody to keep track of everything. But they do make resources available to support you through the process of doing your application and making sure that you're in compliance. rules and eligibility as far as eligible items and things like that, eligible technologies have not changed much over time. But your actual reporting rules, your application rules can change on an annual basis, so you have to keep track of that. As we're looking at these differences in Cat 1 and Cat 2, types of technology that can be supported through Cat 1 compared to the types of technology supported in Cat 2. As you start to wrap your head around this and kind of have that idea of generally what you can do with E-rate, then you start looking at the different forms that you need to manage and the different applications, correct?
Correct. That's
Um,
correct.
so do we want to
Usually,
jump
and
now into
usually,
that?
sure, we can go. Usually, you can start like in July, and well, the first thing that you need to do is like here it says Form 498. Well, Form 498 is where when you file for your, if you file Bear, when you file, you're asking for your reimbursement of the portion that USAC is going to give back to you. Well, if you don't have your proper routing number, bank name, and all that, your money's not going straight to your bank account. So that's why Form 498 is very, very important.
Hmm. Um, I guess if there's a mistake made on Form 498, maybe it's something as small as you flip the number around, or if you change your bank, something occurs where the district or the library changes where they're doing their banking. Is that something that you could update, whenever you want to, or is it a one time, one time every E-rate cycle that you can make these updates?
But you can go, the district goes in and can change this form at any time that they see fit. That's why when the administrator of the portal gives permissions out, this form should be the finance director or whomever is over the finance with the libraries would need to make sure that all the information is correct on the Form 498. And if they don't make any changes, you're good to go. If you change banks, you better change that 498. Otherwise, somebody else is going to enjoy your money.
Okay. So now the 470, I think that's what we're 470, 471 as a vendor partner. Those are the forms that um, that we see most often. That's what we interact with the most as far as seeing what a district or a library system or an individual school is looking for. But from the school side or from the library side, what is that Form 70?
The Form 471 is what I like to call your wish list. That's
Hmm.
not what USAC calls it. But to make it easier for you to remember the Form 471, you need to, the coordinator or whomever's in charge of the technology at the site for the districts, they need to know what kind, if their contract is running out for their category one. Because then on this Form 470, they've got to say that I want 5 internet, or I want how much bandwidth I want between each one of my schools. And all, so this all has to go into your Form 470 and your RFP. You attach a RFP with this Form 470. And like that's why I said it's the wish list, because on your RFP you can say I want prices for 1 gig of internet, 5 gigs, and 10 gigs. Then you can, so then whenever your vendors reply, then you can see what you can afford to spend.
Hmm.
That way, because if you have some smaller schools, you don't need as much, like elementary schools, don't need as much bandwidth as a high school. And so then you have all the different prices. That's why I call it your wish list. And so far as the category two part of it is, when you go to put in your, the district needs to be in contact with someone, a partner that can give them a manufacturer and of the equipment that they need to make them have a robust network so our students can get to the very best of the learning available to them. And so that's why they work. But usually in July, I like for my districts to start in July, talking to their to vendors and getting an idea of what they want to um purchased with their E-rate money.
Mm.
And so then they put all that together and file their Form 470. Well, when they file their Form 470, they have to have it out at least 28 days, unless on your procurement policy for your district, it says you need to have an RFP out longer. Then
Okay.
whichever one is the more restraint, that's the one you have to use
Okay.
for your
And which one was
470.
that?
On the
Particularly
470,
the 470. Okay.
it has to be out, and it has to be out at least 28 days. USAC says 28 days. Some districts might say 6 weeks. It's just whichever one is the more has more restrictions on it. That's the one you have to go with.
Okay.
Okay, so
I know that you mentioned the 471. This is the form that you said is the wish list, or the school's wish list, or the library's wish list.
the Form 470, you put everything on that Form 470 because
Okay.
then, yes, the 470 is the wish list. And then whenever you get your response back from your vendors, then's when you evaluate it and award it.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have to wait. Now we'll go on to the next one, the Form 471. The Form 471, they have a window that opens, USAC does, and it doesn't open usually until about the middle of February, and stays open to the middle or the end of March. So let me go back to the 470 just a minute ago, and you have to have that 470 out 28 days, but you got to have it out long enough that you can still file your Form 471 before the window closes.
Hmm.
The 471 is where you put what you actually want to buy with your E-rate money.
Okay. That's
And when
this one.
you, right, right. This is what you actually want to purchase with your E-rate money.
Okay.
And like I said, you have the window that opens usually the middle of February and closes the middle or the end of March. And if you miss that deadline, you might can get it funded if you go ahead and file it out the window, but there's no guarantee.
What is the? I know that that's not something that we necessarily planned on discussing, but since you brought it up, what's the? Is there a process to request an extension if you need it? What does that look like, and have you done that before?
What happens is it files out a window,
Hmm.
and then once they finish reviewing all the ones that filed in window, then they'll come to you. And then they will, you will have, yes, you will have to file an extension and that's in your USAC portal. And you have to tell the reason why you were filing out a window. It doesn't hurt too bad to do it, but it's better to, it's better
Better
start
to
your
go ahead.
application, your 470 and everything early enough that you have time to do it in the window. And the sooner you can get it all done, I like to have my districts to have all their stuff ready so I can file the Form 471 when the window opens in February. Because when you file, they start reviewing it when you file your 471. So then um, by the middle of April, a lot of times you know whether or not you know that you're funded already. So then you're not sweating it. And and now all these applications, the districts are required to keep them for 10 years. They're required to keep all their RFPs, where they approve and award the contract. They're required. That's the retention is 10 years.
Oh, okay. Okay. I know that's common in anything related to public sector or loan retention process. So that's probably pretty standard for a lot of schools and libraries and stuff to follow something like that.
Right. Okay, and then if we go on to the Form 486, that's the SIPA
Okay.
certification. You have to when you get you when after your review is finished with your 471, you receive what they call a funding decision commitment letter. I myself, when I receive a funding decision commitment letter for anyone, I automatically go in and file my Form 486. Because if you don't file your Form 486, then you're not in compliant.
Mm.
That's saying that your district is participating in the SIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. So that's what that is. So then you're ready, once you get that 486 filed, then you're ready for July 1 so that you can file and request your go ahead and fill out your PO and request your services start.
Okay. Is that Form 472 or is that a different form?
That's the Form 486. But we're ready. We can go on to the Form 472.
Okay. And this is where you'd mentioned the bear versus spy, correct?
Right. There's two ways of paying for your services or equipment. And like I said earlier, the BEAR form, the Bill Entity Applicant Reimbursement Form, that's where if on your category 2, you can use your capital outlay money originally on your PO and pay for all your products and services up front. Then the money gets reimbursed into your checking account, and then it all becomes general operating money. And a
Mm.
lot of districts like to do that. But the SPY form is a service provider invoicing. That's where the district only pays for their undiscounted portion, and the service provider files with USAC and gets their money.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's
Okay?
I'm sure that's a great option though for school districts, schools, or libraries that maybe um, have a limited budget, correct?
That's correct. It's if they're a smaller district that really is struggling, or I mean, I was blessed when I worked with my district that we were a we always filed the bear form. That way we turned our money right into general operating.
Okay. That gives you the flexibility to be able to apply that to other areas of your budget, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Because then the CFO decides if they're gonna what they're gonna do with that, because there they can take that and pay for your set it aside and pay for the telecommunications next year, which cannot be paid for out of capital outlay money.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move right along to the gift rules. This is what we have here on the slide is uh, pretty much it. And it said the purpose of these restrictions is to ensure a fair and open competitive bidding process that is free from any conflicts of interest, any offerings, acceptance, or request of gifts between involved parties is considered a competitive bidding violation. There
Okay.
are limited exceptions to the gift to receiving gifts, which mirror federal government regulations. You need to always be aware of all these free services and what the federal government says you can and cannot do. The combined value of items received by any individual may not exceed $50 from any one source per funding year. One source includes all employees, officers, representatives, agents, independent contractors, and directors of a service provider. Restrictions on gift apply all year, not just during the competitive bidding process.
And I know for us as a reseller and a partner, we'll like to do proof of concept, where somebody can get a chance to see how a technology works within their environment or their system. With E-rate, proof of concept is pretty much off the table. Like that's not something you're going to be able to do as a provider to give somebody something like that, correct?
That's correct.
All right. That's just for for anybody listening. That may be something that you do frequently. That may be something that another partner has done for you in the past. But if you're going to be using E-rate for that particular E-rate project, please do not please not take anything that could be considered or looked upon as a gift or some type of um, impermissible impermissible favor or anything like that. Just to be
And,
on the safe side.
right, and the real big reason, I mean, if you do it and you get caught, you will be red lighted and therefore you won't be able to use E-rate for 5 years.
Okay.
So it's not, $50 or $100 is not worth what you would give up in your E-rate monies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, that goes for the vendor. Also, the vendor would not be able to participate with anybody, any district or library for that 5-year period if they get red lighted.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the SIPA. The SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act. Was passed into law by Congress on December 21st of 2000 as part of a major spending bill. SIPA is a federal law that addresses concerns relating to children's access to harmful, or obscene content that may be viewed while using the internet. USAC requires that a public hearing is held to give the public a chance to ask questions about safety of students using the internet. Okay, the districts or the libraries are supposed to hold a public meeting and let the public know that they have this Protection Act in place to protect their children and give the public an opportunity to ask questions. And whenever you file your Form 486, you're certifying that your district is in compliance with this. Well, if USAC comes back to your district or your library and says, tell us when your public hearing, your public meeting, what date did you do that? And show me. You need to have this. This is
Mm.
very important.
Okay. For if you're looking at a private school, a district, or a library, are they doing this at parent teacher night? Is this more of a larger committee meeting that might be happening? Does this have to be like a large event, or can it be a small event?
It can be included on the board agenda.
Okay.
When you have your regular board meeting, it can just, most of the time they have public hearings like at the very beginning of the meeting. And they will start, let's just say the meeting starts at 5 o'clock, then at 5:10, they will have the public hearing.
Mm.
And then just put it out there and tell them that the district is in compliance with this Children's Internet Protection Act. And this is what we're doing. And open it up for discussion for anyone there at the public meeting to ask questions. If no one's there, they close that public hearing and it's complete.
Okay.
It's nothing, I mean, it's just their way of making sure that everybody's in compliance with SIPA, and which is a good thing.
Yes, ma'am. And I know you touched on these deadlines already. So we have these here as part of the slide. But the 470 deadline regarding the Form 470 application, the Form 471 application, the 28 days is what you had mentioned, either leaving the 470 available for review and response for at least 28 days, or if your school district, school, library has a some type of procurement rule that requires it to be out longer, then you would adhere to whatever the longer time is, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
And
And yes, and we've touched on the 471, how you can't file your Form 71 until the window opens. And then when it closes, then once the window closes and all, then when the reviewer starts, then after they finish, you get your funding decision commitment letter, and then you know how much money you are going to be given. And then you can also, there's still, like I said, we have 2 more years to finish out this 5-year plan that started in 2021. We have 2
okay,
more years. So whatever your category 2 balance is, you have this 2 more turns to use it. And if you've already used it all, you still have 2 more years that you won't get anymore. And of course, there's no I'm quite sure there is discussion, but it isn't out public yet as to what they're going to do, the funding amount per student starting the next 5-year cycle.
okay. And regarding what's left over, I know Janie for the districts and the libraries and stuff that you work with, sometimes I'll ask you to just provide them with a report of what might be left available. For those who are already working with an E-rate consultant, your E-rate consultant should be able to pull that information for you. If you're looking for an E-rate consultant or haven't already worked with somebody, again, please let us know and we can refer you to Janie Griffith, or her contact information will be here at the end of this presentation. Reach out to her and she can help you with that process of determining what you might have left, and how you can utilize those funds or the types of technologies that are eligible for that. And I think again, this is stuff that you've already touched on, but just to reiterate, your 486 deadline regarding the filing deadline for this application, as well as the invoice filing deadline, which of course is incredibly important, especially if you've used Bear, because it's the full amount that you paid out of pocket you want to get reimbursed. But even for SPY, there's a portion that you will pay out of pocket. So you want to make sure that you're able to get reimbursed for whatever you as a school, a district, or a library have put out there.
That's correct.
And this is Janie Griffith's contact information. You can see her email here below or her direct line. But please feel free to reach out to Janie Griffith, Miss Janie. She's phenomenal. Again, she's been doing this since E-rate first came out in '96. I will say, Miss Janie often doesn't bring this up, but Janie is the only person, I think the only person or one of a few people, but she's the first person to ever beat USAC on appeal. So when it comes to being able to present to USAC what it is that you want, why it's eligible, being able to prove that you are right in your request. Janie is the first person to ever beat USAC on appeal. So that's just a little illustration of her expertise there.
Thank you.
And there should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your video. If you're not able to submit your questions, hopefully everybody's been able to stay on with us. I know we went over a little bit. For anybody that might watch this afterwards, if you have more questions, we're going to have our next event August 3rd. You can send your questions to us at solutions@dofcreations.com. If you want us to make an introduction to Janie Griffith for you, please let us know. We can do that as well. Your E-rate consultant and your manufacturer or your technology vendor have to stay separate. So we will not be working with Janie. If there's some type of, if you're trying to have a partnership or collaboration there, that cannot work that way. Your E-rate consultant, your vendor partner, manufacturer partner, and the district, library, or school all have to work separately. And you as a school, library, or district will work directly with your E-rate consultant. But we have to stay separate in that process. We can make a referral to Janie Griffith for you, but again, we have to stay separate. That'll just be, a pass through, just making sure that we connect the experts with the folks in need. Again, for everybody, you should be able to see the Q&A button there. I believe we have that here. I think that's in the 3 dot section. You should see that at the bottom right. It's kind of hard to see, but if anybody has questions remaining, or if you'd like to reach out to us, again, that's solutions@dofcreations.com. We'll have our next event, the second in the 3-part series, coming on August 3rd. Please feel free to reach out to us if any questions come up, if there's something that you'd like to have covered in the next event. And we'll make sure to answer your questions as best as possible.